The night Victorville went silent. If you think you've seen the worst of prison life, you haven't seen this. Hit subscribe, because this one doesn't end the way you think. The alarm didn't sound immediately. That was the first thing Lieutenant Marcus Hale noticed. At 2:17 a.m., inside USP Victorville, silence replaced the chaos that should have followed. No sirens, no shouting, no emergency lockdown announcement. Just a strange, suffocating quiet that settled over the yard like a warning no one heard in time. Then the call came. Unit C, officer down. The radio crackled with distortion, like someone was speaking from underwater. Hale froze for half a second, processing the words. Then instinct took over. "Repeat that," he barked, already moving. No response. Only static. Hale grabbed his flashlight and pushed through the heavy steel door leading into C Unit. The moment he stepped inside, something felt wrong. The lights were still on, but dimmer than usual, flickering, casting uneven shadows across the concrete floor. The tier above him was empty. Cells locked. No movement. Too quiet. Victorville was never quiet. Not this place. Not this unit. C Unit had a reputation, even among staff. Fights broke out here faster than reports could be written. Inmates called it Bloody Victorville for a reason. And tonight it felt like something had already happened. Hale moved slowly, scanning each corner. His boots echoed louder than they should have. Then he saw it, near the far end of the corridor. A body, face down, motionless. "Officer down confirmed," Hale said into his radio, voice tight. "Send medical." Now, still no response. He approached cautiously, every step deliberate. As he got closer, the details came into focus. Correctional Officer Daniel Ruiz. Hale's stomach tightened. Ruiz was experienced, careful, not the kind of officer who got caught off guard. But there he was, on the ground, blood pooled beneath him. Hale knelt down, checking for a pulse. Nothing. Cold. Too cold for something that had supposedly just happened. Hale leaned back slightly, his mind racing. This doesn't make sense. Then he noticed something else. Ruiz's radio, still clipped to his belt. Hale grabbed it, pressing the transmit button. "Control, this is Lieutenant Hale. Officer down in C Unit. I need backup immediately." Silence. No static. Nothing. Hale looked around again, slower this time. That's when he saw the doors. Cell doors. One of them, open. Just slightly. That wasn't possible. Every cell in Victorville was electronically controlled. No manual overrides. No silent openings. Hale stood, heart pounding now. He moved toward the open cell, each step heavier than the last. Inside, the lights flickered again. He reached the door and pushed it open. The cell was empty. No inmate. No signs of struggle. Just a bunk, a sink, and something scratched into the wall. Hale leaned in, raising his flashlight. The words were uneven, carved deep into the concrete like someone had used whatever they could find. He wasn't the target. Hale frowned. What the hell? Behind him. A sound. Soft. Metal. Clicking. He turned quickly. Another door. Opening. Hale stepped back into the corridor. Who's there? No answer. But now, the silence felt different. Not empty. Watching. He moved toward the second cell. The door was open wider this time. Inside, another inmate missing. Hale's grip tightened on his flashlight. This is impossible. Then his radio crackled suddenly. He jumped slightly, bringing it up. Not safe in there. The voice was faint, distorted, but familiar. "Ruiz," Hale said. "Ruiz, is that you?" Static. Then, "He's still here." Hale's chest tightened. "Who's still here?" The radio went dead again. Hale lowered it slowly, his mind racing faster now. 2 missing inmates. 1 dead officer. No alarm. No backup. No control response. And a message carved into a wall that made no sense. He turned back toward Ruiz's body. Something about it felt wrong. The position. The stillness. Hale walked back, slower this time, studying every detail. Then he saw it. Ruiz's hand. Clenched. Tight. Like he had been holding onto something. Hale crouched again, carefully prying the fingers open. Inside, A small piece of paper. Folded. Blood-stained. Hale unfolded it slowly. His eyes scanned the words. And then, he froze. Because written in shaky, rushed handwriting were 3 names. 2 inmates. And 1 officer. Hale's own name. His breath caught. That's not possible. Then, he heard it. Footsteps. Not running. Not panicked. Calm. Measured. Coming from behind him. Hale stood quickly, turning toward the sound. At the far end of the corridor, a figure. Walking toward him. Slowly. Head slightly lowered. Hands at his sides. Hale raised his flashlight, beam cutting through the dim light. Inmate. Stop right there. The figure didn't stop. Kept walking. Closer. Closer. Until Hale could finally see the face. And his blood ran cold. Because it wasn't an inmate. It was Officer Ruiz. Standing. Walking. Alive. But that wasn't the worst part. It was his eyes. Empty. Unfocused. Like he wasn't really there. Hale took a step back. That's not possible. Ruiz stopped a few feet away. Tilted his head slightly. Then spoke. Calm. Flat. You weren't supposed to find him first. Hale's pulse slammed in his ears. Find who? Ruiz didn't answer. Instead, he slowly raised his hand and pointed. Not at Hale, but at the open cell behind him. Hale turned, reluctantly, and stepped back toward the doorway. Inside the cell, there was someone now, sitting on the bunk, perfectly still, watching him. Hale's voice dropped to a whisper. Who are you? The man didn't move, didn't blink. Then finally, he spoke. You're too late. Hale's stomach dropped. Too late for what? The man's expression didn't change, but his voice did. Colder, sharper, for it to stay inside Victorville. And in that moment, every light in C Unit went out. The names that shouldn't exist. Darkness swallowed C Unit in an instant. No flicker. No warning. Just a complete blackout. Like the prison itself had been shut off from the world. Hale froze where he stood, every instinct screaming at him to move, but his body refusing to respond. The last thing he saw before the lights died was the man sitting on the bunk, staring directly at him. Now there was nothing, just the sound of his own breathing, and something else. Movement. Not rushed. Not chaotic. Controlled. Control, do you copy? Hale whispered into his radio. Silence. Then, a faint voice. You need to leave. Hale clenched his jaw. Identify yourself. Static crackled. Then the same voice, weaker now. They're not who you think they are. Hale's grip tightened around the radio. Who isn't? No answer. Instead, the emergency lights flickered back to life. Dim blue. Barely enough to see. Hale's eyes adjusted quickly, scanning the corridor. The man in the cell. Gone. The bunk was empty again. Hale stepped back, pulse racing. No, I saw him. Behind him. Footsteps. He spun around. Ruiz was still there. Standing in the same place. Watching. But something had changed. He was closer now. Hale didn't remember him moving. Ruiz, Hale said carefully, if this is some kind of setup, you need to stop right now. Ruiz didn't react. Didn't blink. Then he spoke again. You read the names. It wasn't a question. Hale swallowed. Yeah, I did. Ruiz tilted his head slightly. Then you already know how this ends. A chill ran through Hale. I don't know anything. Ruiz's lips moved into something almost like a smile. You were supposed to be last. Hale's heart skipped. Last for what? Before Ruiz could answer, a loud metallic slam echoed through the unit. Both men turned. One of the cell doors had shut violently on its own. Then another. And another. Doors began slamming in sequence down the corridor, each impact louder than the last, like a chain reaction racing toward them. Hale stepped back. What the hell is happening? Ruiz didn't move. Didn't even flinch. It's locking them in, he said. Hale shook his head. No, that's not how the system works. But the slamming continued. Until it stopped. Silence returned. Heavy. Oppressive. Hale exhaled slowly, trying to steady himself. Okay, think. He looked back at Ruiz. You said I was supposed to be last. That means there were others. Who are they? Ruiz didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "The names." Hale reached into his pocket, pulling out the blood-stained paper. His hands felt heavier now, slower, like the air itself was resisting him. He unfolded it again. 3 names. 2 inmates. 1 officer. Him. Hale stared at it. Why these people? Ruiz's voice dropped. Because you all saw something you weren't supposed to. Hale looked up sharply. Saw what? Ruiz took a step closer. This time, Hale noticed. You really don't remember? Ruiz asked. Hale's mind raced. Remember what? Ruiz's eyes locked onto his. The transfer. Something flickered in Hale's memory. A week ago. Late shift. Minimal staff. An inmate transfer into C unit. Unusual clearance level. No file details. No background. Just a number. Hale frowned. That's routine. Ruiz shook his head slowly. No, that one wasn't. Hale felt it now. That uneasy feeling he had ignored at the time. The way the inmate had walked in. Calm. Too calm. No resistance. No fear. Just watching. Hale whispered, "The guy from cell 14. Ruiz nodded once. Hale's chest tightened. Who is he? Ruiz didn't hesitate. That's the problem. Hale frowned. What do you mean? Ruiz leaned in slightly. There's no record of him. Hale's pulse quickened. That's not possible. Every inmate exists, Ruiz interrupted. A pause. Except him. Hale felt the weight of that sink in. So you're telling me we brought someone into Victorville who doesn't exist? Ruiz's expression didn't change. Yes. Hale shook his head. No, that doesn't make sense. Ruiz's voice hardened. It doesn't have to. The corridor suddenly felt tighter, smaller. Hale glanced around, noticing something new. The doors that had slammed shut were no longer locked. They were open again, but wider this time, as if inviting something out. Hale took a slow step back. You said we saw something we weren't supposed to. Ruiz nodded. What did we see? Ruiz didn't answer immediately. Instead, he raised his hand again and pointed. Not at a cell. Not at the corridor. At Hale's chest. You saw him look at you. Hale froze. The memory came back clearer now. That moment during intake. The inmate standing still. Then, lifting his head. And locking eyes with Hale. Not aggressive. Not afraid. Just aware. Hale's voice dropped. That's it? That's what started this. Ruiz shook his head. That's when it chose you. The words hit harder than anything else so far. Hale took another step back. Chose me for what? Ruiz's lips parted slightly. For the end. A sudden noise interrupted them. From inside one of the cells. A scraping sound. Hale turned. Slowly. Inside the nearest cell. An inmate stood at the back wall. Facing it. Just standing there. Then. Another movement. Another cell. Another inmate. Same position. Facing the wall. Not moving. Hale's breathing grew shallow. What are they doing? Ruiz answered without hesitation. Listening. Hale shook his head. Listening to what? Ruiz's eyes shifted slightly. Not toward the inmates, but toward the walls. Something that wasn't here before. The scraping sound grew louder now. More cells. More inmates. All facing the walls. All still. All silent. Except for the sound. Hale felt it crawl under his skin. This isn't real. Ruiz turned back to him. It is now. Hale looked at him. Desperation creeping in. Then tell me how to stop it. For the first time. Ruiz hesitated. Then he said quietly. You don't. Hale's heart pounded. There has to be a way. Ruiz shook his head. It already spread. Hale's voice cracked slightly. Spread where? Ruiz's gaze locked onto him again. And this time, there was something behind his eyes. Not emptiness. Not confusion. Something else. Something that didn't belong. Outside, Ruiz said. Hale's stomach dropped. No, that's not possible. This is contained. Ruiz took one final step closer. Close enough that Hale could feel his breath. It was never contained. The scraping stopped. Instantly. All at once. The silence that followed was worse. Because now, every inmate turned. Slowly. In perfect unison. away from the walls, and toward Hale. Dozens of eyes, locked onto him, unblinking, waiting. Hale barely managed to whisper, "What do they want?" Ruiz's voice came from right beside him. "Too close. They're waiting for you to understand." Hale swallowed hard. "Understand what?" Ruiz leaned in, his voice barely audible now. "That you were never investigating this." A pause. A breath. "You were bringing it out." And somewhere deep in the unit, a door unlocked. What walked out of Victorville? The click came from deeper inside the unit. Not loud. Not forced. Just a quiet, deliberate unlock. Hale didn't move. He couldn't. Dozens of inmates stood in their cells, staring at him in perfect silence, their eyes fixed, unblinking, as if waiting for something only he could give. His chest rose and fell slowly now, his fear no longer sharp, but heavy, settling. "Which door was that?" he asked, his voice low. Ruiz didn't look away from him. "The one that matters." Hale swallowed. "Where does it lead?" Ruiz tilted his head slightly. "Out." The word hung in the air. Impossible. Every exit in Victorville required clearance, multiple checkpoints, physical keys, and electronic verification. There was no single door that simply led out. But deep down, Hale knew Ruiz wasn't talking about a normal exit. "Show me," Hale said. Ruiz stepped back. For the first time, he moved like a guide instead of a threat. Hale hesitated only for a second before following. The corridor stretched longer than he remembered. The blue emergency lights cast everything in cold shadows, and the silence behind him, the inmates still watching, felt like pressure against his back. As they walked, Hale noticed something strange. The doors they passed were all open now, every single one. Cells that should have been secured. Empty. "Where did they go?" Hale asked quietly. Ruiz didn't turn. "They're not in the cells anymore." Hale's pulse quickened. "Then where are they?" Ruiz stopped walking, slowly turned his head, and said, "Closer than you think." A sound echoed ahead. Not footsteps. Not metal. Breathing. Multiple. Layered. Hale felt his skin tighten. "You hear that?" Ruiz nodded once. "They're waiting." "For what?" Hale asked. Ruiz's eyes locked onto his. "For you." Hale exhaled sharply, trying to keep control. "This doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense." Ruiz's expression didn't change. "It doesn't have to." They reached the end of the corridor. A door stood there, different from the others. No number. No visible lock. Just solid steel, slightly ajar. Hale stopped a few feet away. "That door shouldn't exist," he said. Ruiz replied quietly. It didn't. Not before him. Hale felt that again, the memory pressing against his mind. The transfer. The inmate with no record. The one who looked at him. "Cell 14, Hale whispered. Ruiz nodded. "He didn't come from somewhere," Ruiz said. "He came through something." Hale stared at the door. "And now it's open." "Yes." Hale's throat tightened. "What happens if I close it?" Ruiz shook his head slowly. "You can't." Hale turned sharply. "Why not?" Ruiz's voice dropped. "Because you already opened it." The realization hit hard. Not physically opening a door, but watching, observing, letting it in. Hale stepped closer to the doorway. Inside, darkness. Not just the absence of light. Something thicker. Like the space itself didn't belong to the rest of the prison. The breathing sound came from within. Slow. Measured. Waiting. Hale hesitated. Behind him, the silence shifted. He didn't need to turn to know. They were there. The inmates. All of them. Standing behind him now. Watching. Ruiz spoke softly. "You were last for a reason." Hale didn't look back. "Why me?" Ruiz answered without hesitation. "Because you didn't look away." Hale closed his eyes for a second, then opened them again, and stepped forward. One step. Into the doorway. The temperature dropped instantly. The air felt heavier, harder to breathe. The darkness inside wasn't empty. It moved. Not fast. Not aggressively. Just existing. "You see it now," the voice said. Hale froze. It wasn't coming from behind him, or from Ruiz. It was everywhere. Inside the space. Inside his head. Hale spoke carefully. What are you? A pause. Then, I am what you left behind. Hale frowned. Left behind where? The voice shifted. Closer. Inside them. Images flashed in his mind. Inmates in isolation. Days without voices. Weeks without human contact. Months staring at walls. Breaking. Slowly. Silently. Hale's voice dropped. You're the result. The voice almost sounded pleased. Yes. Hale felt his chest tighten. And now you're out. A pause. Then. No. Hale frowned. No. We were never in. The words didn't make sense at first. Then, they did. This wasn't something trapped inside Victorville. It wasn't created by the prison. It was revealed by it. Hale took another step forward. The darkness shifted again. Closer now. He could almost see a shape. Not fully. Not clearly. But enough to know. It was watching him. Studying him. Waiting. What do you want? Hale asked. The answer came immediately. To be seen. Hale let out a slow breath. And after that, a longer pause this time. Then, to be carried. Hale's heart pounded. Carried where? The voice softened. Anywhere you go. Behind him, Ruiz spoke one last time. You understand now. Hale didn't turn. Didn't need to. Yes, he said quietly. The weight of it all settled in. This wasn't an attack. Not a riot. Not even an escape. It was a transfer. And he was the one completing it. Hale took one final step deeper into the doorway. The darkness closed in around him. Not violently, but completely. The last thing he heard was the voice. Thank you. Then, nothing. 3 months later, the official report was released. Internal disturbance. Contained. No external threat identified. USP Victorville returned to normal operations. New inmates. New staff. Same routines. Same silence. But something had changed. In the security office, a new officer sat alone, monitoring the surveillance feeds. Dozens of screens. Dozens of cells. All quiet. All still. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Another uneventful night. Then, one of the screens flickered. Just for a second. He frowned, leaning forward. Rewound the footage. Played it again. Frame by frame. And then he saw it. Not an inmate. Not a guard. Something else. Standing just behind the camera's field of view. Too close. Too still. Watching. The officer leaned in closer, squinting. What the hell is that? The figure shifted slightly. Just enough. Like it noticed him noticing. The screen went black. Then returned to normal. The officer sat there for a moment. Then shook his head. Just a glitch. He leaned back again. Relaxed. Unaware. Because behind him, something moved. Quiet. Patient. Waiting. And this time, it wasn't inside Victorville anymore.